When I saw the tiny hospital bracelet in her purse, my whole world tilted. That's the moment everything changed for me. The moment the soft shape of who I believed my daughter-in-law was cracked. It was a thin plastic band, the kind they put on newborn babies, with a name I didn't recognize. But the date was only 2 weeks old. 2 weeks, and she'd been sitting at our dinner table the night before, crying into her folded hands, whispering that she was infertile, that she could never give my son the child he so desperately dreamed of. I remember staring at that bracelet as my fingers shook, the hospital lights humming faintly above me like they were mocking the silence. I felt my throat close, a dry kind of disbelief crawling up my spine. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back, before the lies, before the cracks, before I saw the truth no mother ever expects to find. My name is Elaine, and I've lived in the same quiet neighborhood in Colorado for over 30 years. I'm a creature of routine. Morning coffee by the kitchen window, weekend grocery runs, afternoon walks along the river when the weather allows, and for the most part, life had been kind to me. My son, Michael, was my pride. He'd grown from a sensitive, curly-haired boy into the kind of man who still opened doors for strangers and called me every Sunday without fail. A man with a softness I used to fear the world might crush, but it never did. It only made him better. Then came Leela. The first time he brought her home, she wore a pale blue dress and a shy smile that tugged at something warm in me. She was polite, thoughtful, eager to help clear dishes. She laughed with a hand lightly pressed to her chest, as if even joy was something she handled gently. Michael was smitten, completely. And in truth, so was I, at least with the idea of her. A mother wants to believe her son chose well. The months that followed were filled with wedding plans, small gatherings, and little moments that stitched our families together. I remember the sound of their laughter drifting down the hall when they stayed over, the way Michael's eyes softened when he looked at her, the way she stroked his arm as if she already knew he belonged to her. They married on a sunny afternoon in late spring, a ceremony under an old oak tree, petals catching in the breeze, everyone crying at one point or another. Leela's father walked her down the aisle with a stiff smile, and her mother dabbed her eyes the whole way. Something about them felt strained, formal, but I brushed it off. New families take time. And she seemed devoted to my son. That was what mattered. Or so I told myself. If there was one thing Michael wanted, quietly, deeply, it was to be a father. He'd talk about it when we sat on the porch on warm evenings, hands wrapped around mugs of tea. He'd describe names he loved, stories he wanted to read, the kind of father he hoped to be. And Leela, to her credit, would smile and say, "Someday, Mike, we'll get there." But someday kept drifting further away. At first, it was timing. After she finished her certification, after they moved to a better place, after things settled at her job. Then it became health concerns, minor, vague things she never fully explained. I remember one morning, the two of them sitting in my kitchen. Michael's eyes were red and Leela's hands were clutching a tissue as if it were the only thing holding her together. That was the first time she said the word infertility. She cried softly, biting her lip until it turned pale. Michael rubbed circles on her back the entire time, whispering, "It's okay, we'll get through it." And I believed her. I believed her tears. I believed her trembling voice. Looking back, maybe I needed to believe her, because the alternative would have felt too cruel. The first moment something felt wrong was on a Sunday afternoon, one of those bright, lazy days when the air feels warm enough to carry hopes. Michael and Leela had stopped by for lunch. He was running late, stuck in traffic, so she arrived first. She looked tired, paler than usual, but offered a weak smile. "I'll set the table," she said, brushing past me into the kitchen. I followed a few minutes later and found her standing by the sink, gripping the counter with both hands. Her knuckles were white, her breathing shallow, like she'd just run a mile. "You okay, honey?" I asked. She startled, actually startled as if she hadn't heard me come in. "Oh, yes, just migraines lately." She rubbed her temple, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I offered her water. She declined. I offered to sit. She insisted she was fine. It was the kind of moment you sense something deeper in, but sense doesn't always translate to action. When Michael finally came in, she straightened instantly, pushing her hair back and plastering on a bright expression. Too bright. I told myself I was overthinking. Mothers sometimes do that, especially when it comes to their sons. But something lingered, a quiet unease, settling like dust in corners you don't sweep often enough. Over the next few months, Leela began taking frequent work trips. At least that's what she called them. Short trips, one-day trips to nearby cities. Denver, Boulder, sometimes a little farther, Fort Collins. Always quick, always alone, always last-minute emergencies. Michael never questioned it. He trusted her implicitly. But every time she left, she seemed different, anxious, distracted, a woman with something tightly coiled inside her. One morning, I was at their apartment dropping off some homemade soup because Michael had come down with a cold. Leela wasn't home, another quick trip, and as I placed the container in the fridge, I couldn't help notice something. The calendar on their fridge had a date circled in thick black ink. 2 weeks ago. Written beside it in small cursive handwriting was a single word. Done. I stared at it for too long. Done with what? A project? A certification exam? An appointment? Or something else entirely? I didn't ask. I should have, but I didn't, because nothing in me was prepared for the truth I would eventually find. And once I found it, nothing, not my breath, not my heart, not my certainty in the people I loved, would ever return to what it had been before. I wish I could say the truth revealed itself all at once, clean, sharp, undeniable. But that's not how betrayal works. It starts quietly, like a draft slipping in under a door, a feeling you brush aside, a detail you tell yourself doesn't matter, until suddenly all those little drafts turn into a storm that tears your house apart from the inside. And for me, that storm began the morning I found her car parked where it shouldn't be. It was early March, one of those chilly days when the air feels still warm enough to carry hopes. Michael and Leela had stopped by for lunch. He was running late, stuck in traffic, so she arrived first. She looked tired, paler than usual, but offered a weak smile. "I'll set the table," she said, brushing past me into the kitchen. I followed a few minutes later and found her standing by the sink, gripping the counter with both hands. Her knuckles were white, her breathing shallow, like she'd just run a mile. "You okay, honey?" I asked. She startled, actually startled as if she hadn't heard me come in. "Oh, yes, just migraines lately." She rubbed her temple, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I offered her water. She declined. I offered to sit. She insisted she was fine. It was the kind of moment you sense something deeper in, but sense doesn't always translate to action. When Michael finally came in, she straightened instantly, pushing her hair back and plastering on a bright expression. Too bright. I told myself I was overthinking. Mothers sometimes do that, especially when it comes to their sons. But something lingered, a quiet unease, settling like dust in corners you don't sweep often enough. Over the next few months, Leela began taking frequent work trips. At least that's what she called them. Short trips, one-day trips to nearby cities. Denver, Boulder, sometimes a little farther, Fort Collins. Always quick, always alone, and always last-minute emergencies. Michael never questioned it. He trusted her implicitly. But every time she left, she seemed different, anxious, distracted, a woman with something tightly coiled inside her. One morning, I was at their apartment dropping off some homemade soup because Michael had come down with a cold. Leela wasn't home, another quick trip, and as I placed the container in the fridge, I couldn't help notice something. The calendar on their fridge had a date circled in thick black ink. 2 weeks ago. Written beside it in small cursive handwriting was a single word. Done. I stared at it for too long. Done with what? A project? A certification exam? An appointment? Or something else entirely? I didn't ask. I should have, but I didn't, because nothing in me was prepared for the truth I would eventually find. And once I found it, nothing, not my breath, not my heart, not my certainty in the people I loved, would ever return to what it had been before. I wish I could say the truth revealed itself all at once, clean, sharp, undeniable, but that's not how betrayal works. It starts quietly, like a draft slipping in under a door, a feeling you brush aside, a detail you tell yourself doesn't matter, until suddenly all those little drafts turn into a storm that tears your house apart from the inside. And for me, that storm began the morning I found her car parked where it shouldn't have been. It was early March, one of those chilly days when the air still held the bite of winter. I had driven to Colorado Springs to help my sister move some furniture. We were finishing up when I realized I'd forgotten to bring her the extra set of sheets she'd asked for. "I'll drive back tomorrow," I told her, hugging my coat around my shoulders as we stood in her driveway. But as I stepped onto the sidewalk, something caught my eye. A silver Toyota. Old but well-maintained. A chipped bumper on the left side. It looked exactly like Leela's car. I frowned, squinting to read the plate. It was hers, but this wasn't her city. She was supposed to be in Denver that day. She'd told Michael she had a mandatory training session there. I stared at the car for a long moment. My wind froze in my chest. What was she doing here? A dozen rational explanations flickered through my mind, all thin, all fragile. Maybe she had driven through. Maybe she'd had an emergency stop. Maybe she'd switched plans. But the car was parked crookedly across the street, as if she'd been in a hurry. And there was something else, a small yellow parking ticket tucked under the wiper. It was dated that morning. I hesitated. My hands trembled slightly. Every instinct in me whispered, "Leave it alone, Elaine. Don't go down this road." But my feet moved on their own. I approached the car slowly, as if it might disappear if I blinked too fast. The windows were slightly fogged from the cold, but inside I saw something odd. A folded blanket on the back seat, and was that a tiny bottle? I leaned closer. It was. A baby bottle. I pulled back quickly, my breath catching in my throat. It could have been anything. A friend's, a niece's, a leftover item from someone she drove. But something inside me, something old and familiar, the voice that had guided me through motherhood, whispered a warning, a truth I didn't want to believe. I stepped away, my pulse fluttering fast. When I got home that evening, I didn't tell Michael. I didn't even mention being in Colorado Springs. I simply sat at my kitchen table long after midnight, hands wrapped around a cold cup of tea, replaying that parking lot again and again in my mind. Over the next days, I watched Leela more carefully, in the small, subtle ways you observe someone when you're afraid of what you might see. She seemed lighter, almost relieved. She moved differently, too, with a gentleness around her midsection that didn't match her claim of infertility. She wore looser sweaters, layered sweaters, dresses that flowed instead of clang. And she avoided me. Whenever I visited, she stayed in another room. When I called, she let the phone ring out. When I spoke to her, she kept her eyes lowered, her fingers twisting the hem of her sleeves. I told myself to stop imagining things, but doubt has a way of rooting itself deep. One afternoon, I arrived at their apartment with a bag of groceries. Through the slightly open bedroom door, I heard her whispering to someone on the phone. Her voice was hushed, trembling. No, you can't just show up. They can't know. Not yet. Please. I froze. A rustle, then hurried footsteps. Before I could step away, she opened the door and nearly collided with me. "Oh, Elaine, I didn't hear you come in." Her voice pitched high, eyes wide with panic. "Everything all right?" I asked softly. She swallowed hard, forcing a smile. "Just work issues." Work. That single word had become her shield, quick, convenient, vague. But that day, it didn't land. Something in her gaze flickered. Guilt, fear, something deeper. And for the first time, I saw it. She was hiding something. Michael remained blissfully unaware of all of it. In love, determined, hopeful. They had begun talking about fertility treatments. Or rather, Michael had. She always looked uncomfortable, her smile stiffening, her fingers curling inward. One evening at dinner, he said with a hopeful grin, "I scheduled a consultation for us next month. There's a specialist who thinks she can help." I watched Leela's face drain of color. I don't know if I'm ready," she whispered. "You said you were," he replied gently. "We talked about this." Her eyes flicked toward me, an unreadable expression in them. "I just need some time." The lie was right there on her lips. No woman who desperately wants a child hesitates like that. But Michael couldn't see it. He loved her too deeply, and that kind of love can make even the sharpest mind blind. The truth finally began unraveling the day I received a call from St. Mary's Hospital in Colorado Springs about a billing inquiry. I stared at my phone, confused. I hadn't been to any hospital recently. "Ma'am," the woman said gently, "this call is regarding the visitor authorization form signed under your name. We just need to confirm a detail." "My name?" I repeated, my pulse stuttering. "I haven't signed anything this month." There was a pause. "Are you sure? Someone listed you as next of kin for a patient earlier this month." My throat tightened. My hand began to shake. "What patient?" I whispered. "A newborn infant, born on March 2nd. March 2nd. The same week I had seen Leela's car in Colorado Springs. The same week she told Michael she had a flu and couldn't visit me. The same week she'd been traveling for work. My chair scraped against the floor as I stood abruptly. "What was the mother's name?" I forced out. Another pause, and in that silence, my life split open. "I'm sorry," the woman said. "I can't disclose the mother's name, only that your name was written under emergency family contact." My chest tightened painfully. Why my name? Who would put my name? Unless she had been there, unless she'd given birth, unless she had lied about everything. The woman continued, "We still have the newborn's mother bag here. If you'd like to pick it up for her, But I hung up. My heart was pounding so loud it seemed to echo through the living room. There are moments in life when denial dies. This was one of them. Leela hadn't been infertile. She had been pregnant, and hiding it. And somewhere in Colorado Springs, there was a baby, her baby, my son's child, and none of us knew. I grabbed my coat, my purse, and my car keys, because there was only one place left to go. I don't know how long I sat there in that parking lot after Detective Harris walked away. My fingers were still curled around my coat, trembling from something deeper than fear. It was that awful realization, the kind that doesn't scream at you, but whispers, "Your life is about to change, Linda." By the time I drove home, the sun had dipped behind the trees and the neighborhood was glowing with warm porch lights, families settling in, dinner simmering somewhere, laughter in the distance. And there I was, carrying dread like a stone in my chest. When I stepped inside, the house was silent, too silent. "Edward?" I called softly. His office door was open just enough to show the glow of his computer screen. I pushed it slowly, and there he was, leaning against his desk, arms folded, staring at me like he'd been waiting. "Where were you?" he asked. Not gentle, not curious, a demand. I opened my mouth, then stopped. For years, I'd explained myself, apologized for things I hadn't done, softened truths to keep the peace. But something in me had shifted in that police station. "I was out," I said calmly. His jaw flexed. "You didn't answer your phone." "I was busy." He studied me like a puzzle that refused to cooperate. Then he stepped forward, closing the space between us. "You're hiding something." I almost laughed. The irony was too bitter. "No, Edward," I said quietly. "I think you are." He stiffened, just a flicker, but enough for me to catch. "Don't start," he muttered, turning away. "I've had a long day." "So have I." He didn't ask why, didn't care. He only grabbed his jacket and brushed past me toward the kitchen. "Order something for dinner," he said over his shoulder. "I'm going out." "Where?" "Work." Lie. I felt it, deep in my bones. But confronting him now would be like shouting at a wall and expecting it to bleed, so I let him leave. When the front door closed, the silence came crashing down again, too heavy, too wrong. I walked upstairs to Henry's room. His bed was made, the sheets tucked tight like he always did. The photo on his desk, us at his first baseball game, smiled back at me with a kind of innocence that hurt to look at. I sat on his bed and whispered to the empty room, "Baby, what did you see? Who did you trust?" My phone buzzed, a number I didn't recognize. For a moment I froze, heart thudding. Then I answered. A soft, trembling voice came through the line. "Mrs. Parker?" "Yes? Who's this?" It's Emily." My stomach dropped. Henry's ex-girlfriend, the one he stopped talking to months before he died. "Emily? Sweetheart, are you okay?" She sniffed. I don't know if I should be calling. I'm scared." "Of what?" Her breath shook on the other end. Can we meet, please? I can't talk on the phone." Ice slid through my veins. "Yes," I whispered. "Where?" She gave me the name of a small cafe near the university, a quiet place, neutral. "I'll be there in 30 minutes, I said. Before I hung up, her voice broke. I didn't know who else to tell, but I think Henry was being threatened. My blood ran cold. "By who, Emily?" Her answer was barely audible. "You won't believe me, but I think it was someone in your family." I stood in the kitchen for a moment after the call ended, gripping the counter to steady myself. The room seemed to tilt. My ears rang. Family? Someone in my family? There weren't many options. A sinking feeling crawled through me, one name rising like oil on water. Edward. But I didn't want to believe it, not without hearing Emily first, not without knowing what my son had been running from. So I grabbed my coat and keys, but as I reached the door, it opened, and Edward walked back in, sweaty, disheveled, breathing hard, like he'd been somewhere he couldn't explain. He froze when he saw me. "Where are you going?" he asked sharply. I swallowed. "Out." "You're not." My breath hitched. "Excuse me?" He stepped closer, towering over me. "You were staying in tonight." "Edward, I have somewhere I need to be." "Well, you're not going." His voice wasn't loud, it was worse, low, controlled, dangerous. I had never felt fear of my husband before, not until that moment. "For God's sake," I whispered, "why are you acting like this?" "You tell me." He leaned in, eyes narrowing. "You've been different, secretive. I don't like it." My pulse pounded in my throat. Emily was waiting. Henry needed me, even now, even after death. "I'm leaving," I said firmly. "Move." He didn't. We stared at each other, breath against breath. Then his phone rang. He jerked back, annoyed, and checked the screen, and I saw it. A name that didn't belong on a married man's phone. Sasha. And underneath it, 3 missed calls. My heart seized. He turned the phone face down quickly, too quickly. "Go to bed, Linda," he muttered, pushing past me. "This conversation's over." But it wasn't. Not anymore. Not by a long shot. As soon as he disappeared down the hallway, I slipped out the front door, heart pounding. I had 30 minutes to meet a girl who might finally tell me the truth, and I prayed I wasn't already too late. The cafe was nearly empty when I arrived, the kind of place lit by warm amber bulbs and quiet music humming through unseen speakers. Snow had begun to dust the windows, turning the outside world into a soft blur. Emily sat in the corner, her hands wrapped tightly around a mug she wasn't drinking. When she saw me, her shoulders sagged with relief, or maybe fear. "Mrs. Parker," she whispered as I slid into the seat across from her. "Sweetheart, call me Linda." Her eyes were red-rimmed, her hair pulled into a nervous, messy bun. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. "You said Henry was threatened?" I said softly. "Please, tell me everything." She took a shaky breath. "He didn't want me to tell anyone. He said it would make things worse. But after what happened to him," her chin trembled, "I can't keep it inside anymore." My throat tightened. "Emily, whatever you say, I will believe you." She hesitated, then reached into her backpack and pulled out a small, zippered pouch. She placed it on the table. "I kept this," she whispered. "I didn't know what else to do." I slowly unzipped it. Inside was Henry's old flash drive. My heartbeat stumbled. "Where did you get this?" "He gave it to me," she said. 2 weeks before he died. He said if anything happened to him, to give it to you." The cafe noise vanished. The walls closed in. "He didn't explain, just said, 'Keep it safe, and don't trust—'" She swallowed. "Don't trust your father." I felt my breath leave me in one violent exhale. "No," I whispered. "No, you must have misheard." But Emily didn't blink. "I didn't mishear." I shut my eyes, my fingers gripping the drive so tight I could feel the edges digging into my palm. "What else, Emily?" My voice was barely sound. She looked around the room nervously. Then she leaned in. "Your husband, he's been seeing someone, a woman named Sasha." I felt the world tilt. It was true. The calls, the attitude, the late nights. "He didn't just cheat. Sasha was involved in something. Henry found out. He told me she was dangerous and that your husband was mixed up with her." I stared at her, unable to speak. "Henry said Sasha threatened him one night," she whispered, "told him to forget what he saw, but he wouldn't. He said he had proof, on that drive." My fingers tingled with numbness. "What did he see?" I whispered. Emily's eyes filled with tears, her hands trembling. "I don't know exactly, but he said it was something illegal, something big. I heard him arguing with someone on the phone once. He kept saying, "I won't be part of this." And then, she covered her face with her hands. He was gone. I felt tears welling behind my eyes, hot, dizzying, painful. My son was scared, I whispered to myself. He was scared and he didn't come to me. Emily reached across the table and grasped my hand. He trusted you. That's why he made me promise to give you the drive. I stared at her for several seconds, then squeezed her hand gently. You did the right thing coming to me. She nodded, wiping her cheeks. Will you be okay? I don't know, I admitted, but I'm going to find out what's on this drive. We stood. I hugged her, tighter than I expected to, and whispered, "Thank you." She clung to me, crying softly. I miss him so much. I do too, more than you can imagine. When she left, I remained frozen in that booth, the flash drive burning a hole in my pocket. The truth was finally in my hands. But getting home, that was the part that frightened me. Because when I stepped outside, the cold slapped me breathless, and I saw it immediately. Across the street, a dark sedan, engine running, a silhouette inside, watching me. I froze. My breath came out in a fog of panic. My phone buzzed. A text message. Unknown number. Go home, now. My blood turned to ice. Before I could move or react, the sedan slowly pulled forward, then disappeared down the street. I stood there shaking, wondering how deep this went, how close the danger was, and whether, after everything I'd just learned, I was even safe to go home. But I didn't have a choice. I had to face Edward. I had to see if guilt would show on his face. So I drove back, palms sweating on the steering wheel, one thought pulsing like a drumbeat. Someone doesn't want me to open that flash drive. When I walked through the front door, the house was dark, except for the living room lamp glowing softly. Edward was sitting in his recliner, waiting, not moving, not blinking. "Where were you?" he asked. His voice wasn't angry. It was cold, calculated. I swallowed the fear rising in my throat. "Out," I said. "Why?" "Because," he said, standing slowly, "we need to talk about Henry." Edward stood in the warm glow of the living room lamp, but nothing about him felt warm. His shoulders were stiff, his jaw clenched tight. When he looked at me, it wasn't the look of a husband worried about his wife. It was the look of a man calculating what I might already know. I kept my coat on. I didn't trust myself to move closer. "What do you mean, we need to talk about Henry?" I asked quietly. He didn't answer right away. He walked to the fireplace, poked at ashes that didn't need poking, then finally said, "I know you've been reminiscing, asking questions, digging, talking to people." My heartbeat picked up. He knew I'd spoken to someone. "Of course I ask questions." I kept my voice steady. "My son died." He stiffened. That was the word that made him flinch. Died. Edward had never once said Henry died. He always said, "when we lost him," like the phrasing made it gentler, lighter, less real. But tonight there was no softness in him. He turned toward me fully. "You need to let this go, Linda." My fingers slipped into my coat pocket, brushing against the flash drive. Cold, hard, heavy. "Let what go?" I asked. He stared at me like I was a child refusing to obey. This obsession with digging into things. I didn't blink. Into what things? He exhaled loudly, frustrated. "Into his death, into the past, into things that will only hurt you." Ah, there it was, the thing people say when they're hiding something. It's for your own good. "Edward," I said softly, "if there's something you want to tell me." His face hardened immediately. "There's nothing to tell." He stepped closer, and I caught something on him, a faint smell I hadn't noticed in a long time. A woman's perfume. Not mine. Not the generic hotel scent you catch on people in public. Something floral and expensive. Something deliberate. Sasha. My stomach clenched. "Sit down," he said. "I'd rather stand." "I said," his voice snapped like a whip before he suddenly forced it calmer. "Please, sit." I didn't. Not because I was trying to be strong, but because my legs were shaking, and if I sat, I wasn't sure I'd be able to stand again. He noticed. He also noticed I didn't take my hand out of my pocket. "What's in your hand?" he asked. I swallowed. "Nothing." He took a slow step toward me. "Linda." Another step. "Show me." My heart hammered harder. I tightened my fingers around the flash drive. "I don't have anything," I whispered. He stared at me, searching my face for truth, for guilt, for fear. He found the fear. His jaw clenched. "You did talk to someone." I didn't respond. "You talked to Emily." I inhaled sharply. "How would you know that?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The dark sedan, the text message, "Go home, now." He had someone following me. Suddenly, all the small things added up. The strange phone calls, the laptop he kept locked, the way he always asked where I was going when I left the house. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Whatever she told you, she misunderstood. She said you were involved with a woman named Sasha." He didn't even flinch. He didn't deny it. Instead, he sighed, annoyed. "She's trouble. I told Henry to stay away from her." My skin prickled. "You told Henry?" "Yes." "Why would Henry even know her?" He paused for a half-second too long. He got mixed up in something. He was curious. He asked questions he shouldn't have. My breath froze. "And that got him killed?" I whispered. His eyes snapped to mine. "I did not say that." "But you didn't deny it," I said. His voice sharpened. "Henry was impulsive, stubborn. He thought he was invincible." "Henry was good," I shot back. "Curious, yes, but good." Edward's nostrils flared. "Good doesn't keep you alive, Linda. Knowing when to stay out of things does." I stared at him, horrified. "Do you hear yourself?" I whispered. "You sound like someone who knows exactly what happened to him." He stepped closer, so close I could see the tiny scar above his eyebrow from when he fell off a bike at age 9. "You think I had something to do with our son's death?" I didn't answer. His jaw ticked. His eyes darkened. For a moment, I saw something dangerous in him, something sharp and cold and buried deeper than I'd ever looked before. "It would be a mistake," he said quietly, "to go down this road, Linda." I held his gaze, my hand still on the flash drive. "I want the truth." "You can't handle the truth." The words were so cliché, so absurd, that for a moment I thought I misheard. But his face didn't change. He meant it. I took a step back, heart pounding. "When Henry died," I whispered, "you didn't cry at the funeral." He looked at me calmly. "I don't cry in public." "Yes, you do." My voice trembled. "You cried when our dog died. You cried when your mother passed, but not for Henry." He said nothing, just stared. "I've never been afraid of you," I whispered, "until tonight." He exhaled slowly. "Then stop giving yourself reasons to be." A chill went up my spine. I turned and walked to the stairs. He didn't stop me, but he called after me, voice calm, empty, terrifyingly sure. "Linda, listen to me carefully." I froze on the first step. "Whatever you're hiding, whatever you think you know," his voice dropped to a low, icy warning, "burn it and forget it." I didn't respond. I didn't look back. I climbed the stairs with shaking legs, closing the bedroom door behind me. Then I locked it. And for the first time in my marriage, I slept with something clenched in my hand. Not my husband's hand, not a photo of my son, but the flash drive he died protecting. Little did I know, tomorrow morning, everything would get worse. I didn't sleep. I don't know if I even closed my eyes. Every time the house settled, every time a pipe clicked or the furnace hummed, my body jolted awake as if I'd drifted too close to danger. Around 6 a.m., a thin band of pale morning light crept through the curtains. I was still sitting up against the headboard, clutching the flash drive like a life raft. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A single text from an unknown number. "Check your car." My breath caught. I stared at the message, reading it again and again. Who? I scrambled out of bed, my heart pounding so loud it swallowed any sound from downstairs. I cracked the bedroom door. The house was silent. No movement, no footsteps. But Edward's coat was gone from the hanger. He'd already left the house. I pulled on jeans, a sweater, and shoes without even brushing my hair. I held the flash drive in my palm and hurried downstairs. The silence felt like a blanket that smothered instead of comforted. When I stepped outside, the cold morning air slapped my face awake. My car sat in the driveway, covered in a thin layer of frost. I approached slowly, scanning around me like I expected someone to jump out. Then I saw it. A white envelope tucked under the driver's side windshield wiper. My throat tightened. I looked up and down the street, empty. No early walkers, no cars passing by. Trying not to tremble, I pulled out the envelope. There was no name, no writing, completely blank. I glanced back at the front door and saw the curtains in the living room move, just slightly. Someone was inside the house, watching me. I swallowed hard, slid into the car, and locked the doors. Only then did I open the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a small photograph. First, I lifted the photo, and my world spun. It was Henry. Not a childhood photo, not a graduation photo, a photo taken maybe a week before he died. He was wearing the same black jacket I'd found in his room. He was standing near a parking lot I didn't recognize, and his expression? He looked scared. Not careless, not reckless, not impulsive. Scared. I flipped the photo over. There was a handwritten note. He asked the wrong person the right question. My breath hitched. The sheet of paper inside the envelope was folded into thirds. My hands shook as I opened it. It was a printed report, a police incident report. But not from our city. It was from the same city Emily mentioned, the one where Henry had been meeting Sasha. The date was 3 days before his death. The report was about a disturbance outside a bar. Witness statements listed Henry and a woman named Sasha Reed. My heartbeat quickened. I read further. Argument escalated. Witnesses reported the male saying, "My father wouldn't want this." Female responded, "Your father knows exactly what he wants." The words blurred for a second. My father. Edward. I read it again slowly, forcing myself to process each word. Your father knows exactly what he wants. A cold numbness spread across my body. My hands clutched the steering wheel to steady myself. Someone knocked on my passenger window. I nearly screamed, but it wasn't a stranger. It was my neighbor, Mrs. Hawkins, bundled in her robe and holding a coffee mug. "Linda, everything all right? You're out here awful early." I forced a small smile. Just getting an early start." She eyed the envelope in my lap. "You get some mail?" I nodded quickly, folded the papers back in, and tucked them under my coat. "Oh, before I forget," she said, leaning slightly closer, "your husband left in a hurry today, practically peeled out of his driveway. You two okay?" I hesitated. What was I supposed to say? I gave a shallow nod. "We're fine." She smiled, but there was something uncertain in her eyes. "All right then, you know I'm right next door if you need anything." I thanked her, waited for her to walk away, then exhaled slowly. I didn't start the car. I didn't trust myself to drive yet. Instead, I opened the envelope again and stared at the line. Your father knows exactly what he wants. I felt a mix of nausea and dread creeping into my bones. Then my phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. Don't trust him. Another buzz. He's already headed to her. Her. My hands went cold. Sasha. I glanced toward the house. Edward's car was gone, just like Mrs. Hawkins said. He'd left unusually early. If he was going to Sasha, my stomach churned sharply. I knew I couldn't go back inside. I couldn't wait for answers to fall into my lap. Not anymore. I started my car, heart pounding. There was only one person who might still be alive and dangerous and connected to Henry's last days. Sasha. And if Edward was going to her, I whispered to myself, barely breathing, I have to get to her first. As I pulled out of the driveway, the weight of everything settled in my chest. The lies, the secrecy, the warning texts, the photo of my terrified son, and the flash drive gripping my palm like a second heartbeat. While driving toward the highway, I kept glancing in the rearview mirror. But what scared me wasn't a car following me. It was the question growing louder in my mind with each passing mile. What if my son didn't just die? What if someone made sure he never came home? The highway stretched before me like a dark ribbon, the early morning fog curling along the sides of the road. Each mile I drove, my mind raced through pieces of the puzzle I had barely begun to understand. Henry's death, Sasha, Edward, Emily, and most of all, the hidden baby that Leela had kept from us. The flash drive burned in my pocket like a secret I wasn't ready to reveal yet. But I knew I couldn't wait. Every passing second could change the course of everything. I pulled over at a small rest stop to gather my thoughts. The cold air bit my cheeks as I opened the envelope again, reading the police report one more time. Every word seemed deliberate, every phrase a thread leading somewhere dark. Henry had stumbled into something, maybe unknowingly, and it was costing him his life. And somehow, Edward had been involved, or at least complicit. I shook my head. No, this can't be real, I muttered, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles whitened. I couldn't think about fear anymore. Fear had no place in this, not now. There was only one thing I could do. Find the baby, Leela's baby, my grandson or granddaughter, and find the truth. Emily had mentioned Colorado Springs. That was my first anchor point, but the city was big, unfamiliar, and I had no idea where Sasha or Leela could be. I decided the best place to start was the hospital Emily mentioned, St. Mary's. If Leela had left the newborn there, even temporarily, someone must have seen her, or at least records would exist. When I arrived at St. Mary's, I kept my head down. My hands trembled slightly as I approached the information desk. "Good morning," I said, trying to steady my voice. "I'm here about a visitor inquiry, a newborn baby." The receptionist gave me a polite smile but frowned. "Ma'am, I'll need some identification, please. And the name of the mother?" I hesitated. I didn't have a name. Leela had used a fake one for confidentiality, I realized. But I did have my own, listed as emergency contact. "I'm the emergency contact," I said quickly. "I need to know if my daughter-in-law recently delivered a baby here." Her eyes flicked to the computer. She typed, then paused. "It looks like we have a record. Yes, a newborn was admitted last week. Mother requested confidentiality. The baby is currently being discharged, but you're listed as the contact." My stomach twisted. Relief, fear, hope, all rolled together. "Can I see her? The baby?" The receptionist hesitated, a flicker of curiosity in her eyes. "I'm afraid only the mother can authorize that." I nodded, understanding. Yes, I know, but could you tell me where she went after discharge? I can take responsibility to bring the baby to safety if needed. She shook her head. I'm sorry, ma'am, we can't disclose that, but you might try local shelters or family services. I thanked her and left, heart hammering. Every second without my grandson or granddaughter felt like a knife twisting deeper. I drove through the streets of Colorado Springs, following instincts rather than a map. The air smelled faintly of wet asphalt and pine, the kind of scent that made me feel both alert and unsettled. Then, out of nowhere, I noticed a small daycare center, the kind of place you don't usually see on a main road. Something about the way it was tucked in the corner made my heart skip. I parked and approached cautiously. Inside, I saw a woman holding a small baby, Leela, my daughter-in-law, the same fragile smile, the same guarded posture I had seen countless times before. The baby was wrapped in a soft pink blanket, its small face peeked out, eyes wide and curious. My breath caught. My grandson, hidden all this time, right in front of me. I took a hesitant step forward. Leela? I said softly. She froze, lifting her head. Her eyes widened, panic flooding them. The baby stirred, looking up at her. Elaine? She whispered, voice trembling. What are you doing here? I could ask you the same thing, I said, keeping my voice calm but firm. Why did you hide this from us? From Michael? From me? Her shoulders slumped. She clutched the baby tighter. I was afraid. I didn't know how to tell you. I thought you'd be angry at me for hiding it. Afraid? I asked, my voice catching. Afraid of what? Afraid of giving life to your child? Afraid of love? Tears pooled in her eyes. I couldn't. I thought I could protect the baby, keep him safe from all the drama, all the fighting. I swallowed hard, taking a step closer. Leela, you've protected no one by hiding this. Not Michael, not me, not even your baby. The baby cooed, reaching a tiny hand toward me. My heart melted. And then, just like that, all the anger and shock and hurt melted into something else. Resolve. I had to protect this child, and I had to uncover the truth behind everything else. Leela's voice shook as she spoke, clutching the baby tightly. I didn't want to hurt anyone. I just wanted to protect him from Edward, from everything he does behind closed doors. I felt a chill. My husband, my son's father, Edward. Tell me everything, I said, forcing calm into my voice. Start from the beginning. I need the truth. She swallowed hard. After I told Edward I was pregnant, he wasn't happy. He didn't want another child in the family. He said it would ruin everything, that it wasn't time, that Michael needed to focus on his career, on what he wanted. I tried to argue, but her voice broke. He's always been controlling, even before Michael died. I clenched my jaw, trying to suppress the anger building inside. Controlling. That was one word for it. Dangerous was another. He offered me a way out, she whispered, eyes avoiding mine. He promised he would keep me safe, that no one would ever know if I left the city to give birth somewhere else, secretly. I thought I was protecting the baby, Linda. I really did. I thought I could handle it, keep it hidden until it was safe. I felt a wave of conflicting emotions, anger at her for hiding it, but deep understanding of the fear that drove her. She had been trapped between Edward's manipulation and my son's memory. Lila, I said softly. "You did what you thought was best, but keeping this from Michael, from the family, it hurt more than you know. I understand fear, but it's time to bring the truth out." She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I know. That's why I called Emily. She helped me start the plan to reach you. I knew I had to tell someone who would protect him, someone who would do the right thing." I reached out and gently touched the baby's tiny hand. The soft warmth of him grounded me. He was so small, so vulnerable, and yet in him I saw a spark of hope, a living, breathing connection to my son, my grandson. "We need to leave," I said firmly. "We can't stay here. Edward, he'll come looking. He'll do anything to stop this from getting out." Lila whispered, "He's always one step ahead. That's why I couldn't stay. He watches. He listens." I didn't answer. I understood. Edward's control had been subtle, invisible until now. We drove to a small, safe house Emily had arranged for temporary placement. She had connections, people who could hold the baby while we figured out the next steps. Inside, Lila placed the baby in a soft bassinet. He stirred, then drifted back to sleep, unaware of the storm circling the adults in the room. Emily paced nervously. "Linda, you have to see this," she said. She pulled out a folder. "I've been compiling everything Henry gave me, emails, messages, and the flash drive." I took the drive in my hand. My pulse quickened. Everything Henry had collected, everything he feared, was here, and now I could see it all. We gathered around Emily's laptop and opened the files. Emails between Edward and a woman named Sasha showed the pattern clearly: manipulations, bribes, threats, plans to control, to hide truths. But what made my blood run cold was a single document, a transfer of money from Edward's account to a private hospital in another city, the same city where Lila had secretly given birth. He'd orchestrated the entire cover-up. "He didn't just manipulate Lila," Emily said quietly. "He controlled everything, the baby, the locations, even Henry's last movements." I felt fury and grief surge together. My son had died, and Edward had lied at every step. Every coincidence had been carefully engineered. I turned to Lila. "You were right to hide him. Edward couldn't be trusted. But now it's time we take control. We protect him, we reveal the truth, and we make sure he pays for what he's done." Lila nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Yes, I can't let him ruin our lives anymore." I clenched my fists. Not anymore. We spent the night strategizing. Emily had contacts who could help us make sure Edward didn't interfere, didn't track us, didn't take back control. By morning, I felt a mixture of exhaustion, adrenaline, and grim determination. The weight of the secret had shifted from something that scared us to a weapon of truth. I stared at the baby sleeping peacefully. He had no idea of the danger or the deceit that surrounded him. I silently promised, "No one will harm you. No one will take your life or your family away from you. Not Edward, not anyone." The next step was clear. Edward had to be confronted, publicly, carefully, with evidence. And this time, I would not be silent. I looked at Lila. "Are you ready?" "For him to face the truth? Yes, I am." I took a deep breath. "Then let's make sure he never hurts anyone else again." And for the first time in weeks, I felt the first flicker of hope that justice, in some form, was finally within reach. The morning air was sharp, almost biting, as I drove Lila and the baby to the small rented office Emily had arranged. It was neutral territory, nondescript, quiet, the perfect place for a confrontation without interference. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, the flash drive resting against my thigh like a loaded gun. Lila sat in the back seat, holding the baby, whispering softly to him, "It's okay, sweetie. Grandma's here." I swallowed hard. My son's child, Henry's child, safe in my arms, yet the weight of the past weeks pressed down like a mountain. We arrived at the office building. Emily met us outside, giving a small nod. "He's coming," she said quietly. I braced myself. Edward would appear any second, smug, controlled, thinking he still held the upper hand. But he didn't know we had the evidence. He didn't know Henry had trusted us to uncover the truth. The door opened, and Edward stepped inside, calm as always. Black coat, neat hair, that unreadable expression. He stopped when he saw me, Lila, and the baby. "Linda," he said, voice neutral. "I got your message. What is this about?" I didn't flinch. "This is about the truth, Edward. About Henry, about everything you've hidden from this family." He raised an eyebrow. "Careful, Linda. You don't know what you're accusing me of." I pulled the flash drive from my pocket, letting it dangle between us. "I do, and I have proof." Edward's eyes flicked to it. For the first time in weeks, I saw something in him. Unease, a crack in his armor. "You don't," he said slowly. "You have suspicions, that's all." I shook my head. "No, we have emails, messages, transfers, evidence of manipulation, coercion, and deceit. You lied to Leela. You lied to Michael. You lied to me. You orchestrated Henry's fear and ultimately his death." Edward's jaw tightened. "Linda, this is insane. You have no idea what you're dealing with." "Insane?" I echoed, voice rising. "You told Leela she couldn't have our grandchild in this house. You forced her to hide him from us. You controlled her, and you left Henry scared and alone while hiding your own role in everything." The room felt smaller, the tension thick enough to taste. Edward's composure wavered. You don't understand," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Yes, I understand," Leela said firmly, standing. "You made me hide my own child because you wanted control. You manipulated everyone around you, and now you will face the consequences." The baby stirred, letting out a small wail. The sound broke the tension for a brief moment, reminding us of what was really at stake. I stepped closer to Leela, instinctively shielding the baby from Edward. Emily stepped forward and connected her laptop to the small projector. One by one, emails and bank transfers flashed on the screen. Edward's face went pale as documents appeared, payments to private hospitals, messages instructing Leela to relocate, threats against anyone who tried to intervene. Every carefully orchestrated lie, every manipulation was there in black and white. You can't," he stammered, trying to regain control. "No," I said firmly. "This time, Edward, you have no control. Not over Leela, not over Henry's child, not over me. You've had your power for too long, and now the truth is out." Leela held the baby tighter, her own anger flaring. "You hurt my son. You scared me. You hid my baby from his family. You're done." Edward's fists clenched. "You think you've won? You think a flash drive and some emails prove anything?" "Yes," I said. "It proves you're not untouchable. It proves your lies, and it proves that Henry trusted the wrong man in his life." For the first time, Edward looked small, cornered. His eyes darted around, realizing the web he had spun was now trapping him. "You'll regret this," he said quietly, almost to himself. "No," I said softly, leaning closer. "I'll only regret that it took this long for the truth to come out." He didn't respond. He didn't fight. He didn't speak another word as the emails and evidence played out in the room, exposing years of manipulation, control, and deceit. I felt a wave of relief, tempered by exhaustion. The confrontation was over. Edward had been exposed. His power over us, over Leela, over my family, over Henry's memory, had ended. Leela whispered, tears streaming. I can finally breathe. I nodded, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. And this little one will know the truth one day, that we fought for him, that we protected him. The baby cooed softly in response, as if sensing the shift in the room, the safety finally surrounding him. The tension that had gripped me for weeks finally began to ease, though my body still ached from sleepless nights and the weight of fear. Edward's lies had been exposed. The baby was safe. Leela and I were finally in a place where we could breathe without constant vigilance. We left the rented office that afternoon. The sun was low, casting golden streaks across the city skyline. I held the baby in my arms, feeling his tiny fingers curl around mine. There was an innocence in him, untouched by the betrayal and manipulation that had surrounded his arrival into this world. Leela walked beside me, tears on her cheeks, but a small, relieved smile on her lips. "I can't believe we made it through," she whispered. I shook my head, softly laughing despite the lingering heaviness. It wasn't easy, but the truth always finds a way to come out. We spent the next few days quietly rebuilding a sense of normalcy. Leela and I took turns caring for the baby, sharing laughter, tears, and quiet conversations about Henry. Every detail, every memory of him became a thread connecting us. It was painful, yes, but also healing. A week later, we returned to the city to face the rest of the family. Emily had helped coordinate a small gathering at a neutral location. Everyone was tense, unsure what to expect. Edward showed up, silent and guarded, but the evidence we had gathered left no room for denial. As the emails, messages, and documents were presented to the family, gasps and murmurs filled the room. He tried to speak, but no one listened. His authority had crumbled. The manipulation, the secrecy, the control, all were exposed. Leela stood tall beside me, holding the baby. "He is safe," she said firmly, "and from now on, no one will control him like Edward tried to control us." The weight of relief was almost physical. I felt it in my shoulders, my chest, my very bones. Henry's memory, our pain, our love, it had all led to this moment of clarity, justice, and protection. After the confrontation, we found a quiet moment alone. I held the baby close, feeling the soft rhythm of his breathing. Leela sat beside me, her hand on my arm. "You were right," she said softly. "I was scared, but now I understand that hiding him only made things worse. I should have trusted you sooner." I shook my head. "You did what you thought was best. That's all any of us can do sometimes. Fear makes us do strange things. But the important thing is that we came together and we protected him." We shared a long, quiet moment. Outside, the world continued, unaware of the secrets, betrayals, and truths that had unfolded behind closed doors. But inside, there was peace. Over the following weeks, life began to take on a new rhythm. Edward was cut off from the family's trust. Legal action had been taken, but it was Leela and the baby who mattered most now. Every morning I held my grandson and marveled at the fragile, innocent life in my arms. He was a living connection to Henry, a reminder that even in the darkest times, hope could survive. Leela grew stronger each day, reclaiming her confidence, her voice, her sense of self. And I realized that the greatest gift we could give this child was love, truth, and protection. Sitting by the window one quiet evening, I held the baby and thought of Henry. My heart ached for him, yes, but I also felt gratitude. Gratitude that we survived, that the truth came out, and that his child, our family's hope, was safe. Sometimes life tests us with betrayal, deception, and fear, but in those moments, courage, love, and determination can create light where darkness seemed endless. And I thought to myself softly, Would you have the courage to fight for the truth even when it seems impossible? To protect what matters most, even if it means facing betrayal, lies, and danger? The baby stirred in my arms, his tiny hand reaching toward my face. I smiled, kissed his forehead, and whispered, "Your grandfather would have been proud of us, and I promise I will always protect you." As the sun dipped below the horizon, I realized something important. Healing doesn't erase the past, but it gives us strength to build a future, one filled with love, honesty, and hope. And in that moment, I knew we would survive, we would thrive, and we would never let fear or deceit steal our family again.